10 years ago this week, a little-known musical had its first preview at the Public Theater in New York City. That musical was a rap opera about the founding fathers of America called Hamilton. And of course, as they say, the rest is history. So today I want to look at a few of the things that made Hamilton so successful. If you don't know me, by the way, hi, my name's Mateo. I'm a musical theater composer and music director, splitting my time right now between Toronto and New York City. And this is the musical I wrote, by the way, Tommy Rhodes. You can check it out on Apple Music and Spotify. And I do analysis videos of my favorite musicals here on this channel all the time. Subscribe if that sounds like your vibe. The thing with Hamilton is that it's not that Hamilton was the first musical to ever use rap music on Broadway or pop music on Broadway. Right before Hamilton came to Broadway, there was a musical called Holla If You Hear Me that flopped spectacularly. And obviously In the Heights, Lin-Manuel's previous Broadway show, also used a lot of rap music in it. So the fact that Hamilton is so revolutionary isn't just because it uses rap music. I would argue that Hamilton is so successful because it combines the popularity and the storytelling potential of rap music with a level of attention to detail in the musical composition that is unmatched on Broadway right now. Like, Lin-Manuel Miranda's use of musical motif rivals Wagner's use of motif in opera. Seriously. So I'm going to look at my top 5 favorite musical motifs from Hamilton today. If you don't know, by the way, a quick definition thing. I'm assuming if you clicked on this video, it's probably because you're a music nerd like me who knows what a motif is. But motif, leitmotif, is the full term. And basically, it refers to a musical idea that keeps coming back throughout a longer work. So, for example, throughout an opera or a musical like Hamilton. And throughout the entire show, it comes to represent a particular person or object or idea. So, for example, every time Angelica walks on stage, we hear that motif. So that more or less is the definition of a motif. Let's look at the top 5 motifs. So these are also just my opinion. So if I miss one that you love, throw it in the comments. And also, the other thing I should say is that a lot of motifs have a subconscious element. That's part of what makes a great motif, is that your brain will recognize the similar sound on a subconscious level, so you'll feel some sort of emotion that you won't be able to explain necessarily the first time you're listening to it, why you're feeling that emotion, that nostalgia or that bitterness or that disappointment or whatever it may be. But it's because of the motif that's baked into the music. And a lot of motifs also have a conscious component, so an element where it's really, really obvious. For example, that Angelica motif, we all know that, and we've all come to associate that with Angelica. We consciously recognize, a lot of us, that every time Angelica walks on that stage, we get that motif. But as you'll see in this video, there are a lot of ways that Lin-Manuel uses these consciously noticeable motifs, again, in subconscious ways. And I think that's one of the coolest things that he does. Okay, so the first one is the narration chords. This comes right off the top of the musical. The whole musical starts with, how does a bastard, orphan, son of a whore and a Scotsman, dropped in the middle of the blah 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 blah. The important part is the chords. B, F sharp, this is the bass line. G, then D, A sharp. That bass line keeps coming back every time we get narration. So every time Burr steps forward to narrate, for example, in What Did I Miss is just one of many examples. 17. 1789. Exact same bass line, exact same chords. So that's the conscious way that motif is used, right? We begin to associate that sound with Burr's narration. Every time he steps out of the story to narrate directly to the audience, tell them what's going on, we hear these chords. So that is a conscious correlation that we make, but there's a subconscious one as well. And it has to do with this character, Eliza. Because in Eliza's big song, Burn, she literally says, I'm erasing myself from the narrative. And the chords of that song, there's only one note in that bass line that's different. And you could argue that it's part of the same chord, because you could argue that that E is part of a F sharp 7, which the A sharp, which we heard in the narration, also would be part of. Right? So you could argue that it's part of the same chord, but the bass line is the exact same up until that point. I saved every letter you wrote me. From the moment I read them, I knew you were mine. How does a bastard, orphan, son of a whore and a Scotsman dropped? Exact same bass line. It's the sound of the narrative, and Eliza is saying she's going to erase herself from the narrative. I just think it's brilliant to use the same chords there. That's so smart. Number 4. The duel theme. Now this one is pretty obvious, right? We all know that every time we get a duel in Hamilton, and there are 3 duels throughout the course of the show, every time we get this theme from the 10 Duel Commandments, which is this like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And that comes back all the time. It comes back when whenever a duel happens. It also comes back at the beginning of the cabinet battle. That's like a minor version of the same theme. If I just take that and turn this G into a G sharp instead, that is the recognizable duel motif. So they use it for literal duels with guns. They also use it for metaphorical duels with words in Congress. I think that's very clever. And then the other thing that's very, very clever about this motif is that the only time we hear it outside of a situation of conflict, the only time we hear it outside of either a duel with literal guns or a duel with words, is when we meet Hamilton's son Philip, and he's learning how to count in French. He sings 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then later, when he's showing his dad his poem, the instrumental is playing. And so it gives us that foreshadowing that Philip is going to die in a duel. Spoiler alert, although the show's been out for 10 years now, that's the whole point of this video. So if you don't already know that, I don't know what to tell you. A lot of the stuff in this video, by the way, was inspired by or drawn from a lecture series that I prepared for the Broadway Maven. And if you don't know about the Broadway Maven, I've talked about them a little bit on the channel before. It's a vibrant online educational community that aims to help its members think more deeply about musical theater. So if you like the kind of stuff that I do on this channel, you'll love the kind of stuff they do over there. There's like 5 to 15 classes every single month for members, and there's a weekly newsletter for members as well. They have special guests, they have celebrities come in, they have raffles for opening night tickets to Broadway and off-Broadway shows. It's a really awesome place to be. It's an awesome place to meet people who also are into musical theater, and you can get a free month of membership at the link in the description of this video. So you may as well give it a try it out, see how awesome it is for yourself, and then you don't have to stick around if you think it's not awesome. I think you'll think it's awesome. I'm also doing co-teaching a series on Wicked in the spring as well. If you're interested in that, I will see you at the Broadway Maven. Anyways, back to talking about Hamilton. Number 3, the satisfied theme. So I talked a little bit about this in the beginning. Right? That theme is classic, and we come to associate it with the character Angelica, because almost every time she walks onto that stage, she's accompanied by that minor pentatonic scale. A pentatonic scale is a scale with only 5 notes in it, and that's minor. But this melody only shows up for the first time in the song Satisfied. And that's actually not the first time that we meet Angelica, right? We meet her in the Schuyler Sisters, where she sings her name. That's her introduction. Angelica! So that's kind of the Angelica theme, if there is one. That's the theme that is associated with Angelica because it's the theme that plays when we meet her for the first time. If there's going to be a musical motif that represents a character, shouldn't we introduce that motif at the same time as we introduce the character? Well, I would argue that this motif, the Satisfied motif, doesn't represent Angelica as a whole. It actually represents her love for Hamilton specifically, because we hear it for the first time. It's introduced in Satisfied, which is a song she sings about her unrequited love for Hamilton. And we hear it throughout the show almost every time she's on stage, which is heartbreaking to me, because if it represents her unrequited love for Hamilton, then that means that everywhere she goes in her life, she feels this unrequited love. She carries it around with her. And that's such a heartbreaking idea to me. Here's an example of where we see it in Take a Break, when she's writing letters to Hamilton. My dearest Alexander, you must get through to Jefferson, to sit down with him and compromise, don't stop till you agree. And we also hear it when she's getting all in her head about the comma that Hamilton writes in the letter. My dearest Angelica, with the comma after dearest. There's that minor pentatonic scale. We also get it a little bit under Hamilton's part of Take a Break, actually, which maybe indicates that he has a little bit of unresolved feelings for Angelica in return, which that supports my hypothesis, I think, that this represents unrequited love and not Angelica as a character. My dearest Angelica, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day. I trust you'll understand this reference to another Scottish tragedy without my having to name the play, whatever the chord is. But we don't get this motif when we meet Angelica, and we also don't get this motif later in the show. We don't get it in It's Quiet Uptown, even though Angelica is on stage and singing, because that's after the Reynolds pamphlet. And in the Reynolds pamphlet, Hamilton breaks Eliza's heart, which by extension breaks Angelica's heart because, as she says, she loves her sister more than anything in this life. And so once Angelica has had her heart broken by Hamilton, we don't hear the Satisfied theme anymore. The next time she's on stage, we don't hear this theme that has accompanied her every other time she's been on stage. Except for the one other time we didn't hear it while she was on stage was the time that she was introduced before she met Hamilton. So I think that this theme represents her unrequited love for Hamilton, and the fact that it keeps coming back every time she's on stage through the entire time she's in love with Hamilton is so painful to me, because it says that she's carrying this love around with her as a burden wherever she goes. Number 2. Burr's chords. Yeah! These chords, I think this is one that some of you may have recognized and some of you won't have picked up on this. It's a little bit more subtle than the 3 that we've looked at so far. This comes to represent Aaron Burr and Hamilton's relationship especially. And it's these chords that we hear in their very first meeting in Aaron Burr, Sir. Right? Pardon me, are you Aaron Burr, sir? That depends. Who's asking? Oh, well, sure. Sir, I'm Alexander Hamilton. I'm at your service, sir. I have been looking for you. I'm getting nervous. Sir, I heard your name at blah, 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 blah. Right? That chord progression keeps coming back, and it's associated with Hamilton and Burr's relationship. It comes back in non-stop, right? In a different key. It's, why do you assume you're the smartest in the room? Why do you assume you're the smartest in the room? Etc. It's also the theme of Wait For It when Burr sings about his life philosophy and how that differs from Hamilton's life philosophy. Theodosia writes me a letter every day. It's in a different key, but if I take that D flat, move it down a semitone, I get C. Ta-da, C. If I take that B flat minor and move it down a semitone, I get A minor. There's the A minor. And if I take this F minor and I move it down a semitone, I get that E minor. So it's the same chord progression, just in a different key for Wait For It. And then we get it also at the very, very end of the show when he kills Hamilton, also in a different key. This is in F, but it's F, D minor, A minor. This is In the World Was Wide Enough, Part 2. And this is I strike him right between his ribs. I try to walk towards him, but I'm ushered away. Same chords, different key. Comes to represent Burr and Hamilton's relationship. It's there from the very first time they meet to the final confrontation in their relationship. But there's one notable song that Burr sings that doesn't use these chords. That doesn't use these Wait For It chords. And it's the one song in the show where Burr decides he's not going to wait for it anymore. It's The Room Where It Happens. And check out the chords that are playing underneath instead. I want to be in the room where it happens. I want to be in the room. Whoa! This chord progression is my number one favorite motif. I think it's brilliant the way that this is used. It's the My Shot / Hurricane chords. These are kind of two motifs, but they play off of each other and they're versions of each other, and I think it's brilliant. My Shot is Hamilton's defining song, obviously, right? Here's the chord progression for it. We get G minor, B flat, C minor over E flat, and then D. So C minor over E flat, that could also just be called E flat, maybe with an extension. Functionally, it's G minor, B flat, C minor, E flat, D. And if you look at the chords that we just heard in The Room Where It Happens, if I move those down a full tone to the same key, I wanna be in the room where it happens. I wanna be in the room. G minor, B flat, C, E flat, D. It's the exact same chord progression. It just doesn't have the in-between chords, these accented chords here, which are going to become important in a moment. But without those, it's the exact same chord progression in The Room Where It Happens. The one song where Burr decides he's not going to wait for it anymore. And in the very next scene, Burr changes political parties just to get a Senate seat. Now, think about how crazy that is. Imagine if, like, Tucker Carlson came out tomorrow and said, AOC for president 2028. That would be an insane thing in the news, because people changing political parties it's such a big deal, but he chooses to do it. That's how desperate he is to chase what he wants. And he says to Hamilton, I'm chasing what I want, and I learned that from you. Representing that is these chords that he also literally learned from Hamilton, because they are the chords that make up Hamilton's anthem, Hamilton's defining song. I think that is brilliant. Another thing that's brilliant about these chords is, remember I was talking about this in-between chord here that I said was going to become important in a moment? Now it's becoming important. Look at this. The first three chords of My Shot, when you include that passing chord, are G minor, F over A, and then B flat. So F over A just means it's an inversion. It's the same collection of notes as F major, F, A, and C. It just means over A means you just move the A down the octave so that the A is in the bass. So there's a few things that are important about this. First of all, this dotted eighth note syncopation. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, we get that little rhythmic jolt of energy. 1, 2, 3, 4, ba, ba, 2, 3, 4, ba, ba. That's also used somewhere else in the show, that exact little rhythmic jolt. These chords, maybe you've heard of them. Aha! You recognize this, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, ba, ba. It's the exact same rhythm with that dotted eighth note syncopation at the end of the bar. Exact same rhythm. These are the chords that play in Yorktown when Hamilton faces death and really believes that he's about to die. He says, I imagine death so much it feels more like a memory. This is where it gets me. On my feet, the enemy ahead of me. It also plays in Hurricane when he feels like his life is crumbling around his ears, even though he's not literally in danger. He's figuratively in danger. He's politically in danger. His life is falling apart because of the threat that he's received from Burr and Jefferson and Madison. So in these moments where his life is falling apart and he's facing down death, literal death or metaphorical death, death of his image, death of his reputation, we get these chords. They are directly related to the My Shot chords. And I talked a little bit about this in my video that I made about Hurricane. So you can check that out if you're interested in really delving deep into this. But they are basically reverses of each other. My Shot is the song where he first says, I imagine death so much it feels more like a memory. And we kind of learn about his motivation in that. He's come so close to death before, and he's so aware of the presence of death that he wants to make something of his life. He knows he only gets one shot in life, and he wants to make the most of that. I am not throwing away my shot. That's how we get to that place mentally with Hamilton. And the chords for this are G minor, F over A, B flat. The chords here are D minor, C, G. Now at first glance, there's not a lot in common between those two chords, but look at this. Here, the first chord is minor. The next two chords are major, right? That's the same here. First chord is minor. Next two chords are major. But it goes even deeper than that. The bass line is going up, right? It goes up by a full tone, and then it goes up by a semitone. In the Hurricane chords, the bass line goes down by a tone, and then I guess in this incarnation of it, the B natural isn't in the bass, but often it is. And if you look at this line that goes D, C, B natural, that line is going down a tone and then down a semitone, which is the exact opposite of what this is doing. This is minor chord, major chord, major chord going up, and this is minor chord, major chord, major chord going down, and they both have the exact same rhythm with that dotted half note syncopation. They are exact mirror images of each other. I think that's so cool. The chords that play when Hamilton is facing down death are the same chords that play when he's singing about what he wants to do with his life. Just reversed. I just think that's the most brilliant thing in the history of the world. And there you have it. Those are my top 5 musical motifs in Hamilton. Thank you so much for watching. And if you like musicals that use a lot of motifs, you will love Tommy Rhodes, the show I wrote. Check it out on Apple Music and Spotify. I put a lot of motifs in there, so see if you can find them all. See you in the next video. Bye.